Art supplies. There's a lot. We're going to be covering today my art supplies and my experience and frustrations with all of these. So, stay tuned. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about my art materials. I previously made a video on this, but it ended up being way too long, so I'm just gonna go and talk about the materials and some really basic overview around them. So I think the biggest one that I have most to say about is paper. So that's the one we're gonna begin with. So first in line is sketchbooks. I don't have many of them. I think I have 2 of them. But this one is pretty much my main sketchbook. And I just recently got it, so it's pretty simple. Most of your drawing is gonna be done on a sketchbook, hopefully. So that's got sketchbooks, and I have this other sketchbook that I'm really excited about. This is sugarcane paper, and I'm pretty excited. I never heard of anything like this, and since the pages are bigger, and I don't know if you can see it here, but the pages are super white, and since it's a little bigger, I have a lot of plans for this sketchbook, so you're probably gonna see a lot of this sketchbook around. And here's my other stuff. Oops. This is my watercolor paper. I'm essentially a watercolorist just because of my crazy attachment to that medium, but it's a whole nother topic. This is what I called this is student grade paper. This one is a hot press Fabriano paper, and it's a smoother texture paper. That's what hot press paper is. I don't know if you can actually see it, but it's just super smooth. You can do line working here with pen and ink, and the line actually goes really smooth. It behaves a little differently than cold press, which has a little more texture. And this is 25% cotton paper. And for watercolors, if you're learning, this paper is really not that great, if depending on your style. But if you're, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And this is the other type I have, is cold press paper. This is Strathmore 300 series, and personally this paper, I'm actually little by little getting rid of it. I don't like it as much anymore. But just in general, cold press would tend to have a little bit more of a texture. So you see in this area how the texture goes. So the paint would actually sit in these valleys and everything, giving it a little bit of a grainy look. And I think it actually looks really nice. This is Arches or Arch. I don't know. I think it's French. I have no idea. However, this paper is amazing. I've had actually these 2 pads for close to 3 years because I always felt a little inadequate to paint on this paper, which is kind of it's kind of silly, but that's how I am, I guess. This is cold press, 100% cotton paper, and this one is the hot press, 100% cotton. I like both, but I usually lean more towards the hot press. Other paper I have is this Strathmore, again, 300 series, it's pretty much kind of like a cardstock, but this paper is mainly meant more for dry media and just semi-wet. For watercolors, it doesn't. If you're doing light washes, it'll work just fine. But for Copics and everything else, this paper actually works pretty nice. So it's a little heavier than just your regular paper. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually more heavy. And this paper it's pretty much a multi-purpose paper. It's not about the brand, it's pretty much the style of paper, smooth Bristol. I see this paper used a lot in comics and whatever. So it's really nice. Next up, I'll go to my graphites. These go into the category I started. When I first learned to draw and everything, I started with graphite, and eventually I ended up finding these things. These are graphite sticks. Instead of your regular pencil that has a wooden casing and a little bit of a leading here, this whole pen is filled with, this whole pen is pretty much the graphite. This pencil tends to be a little more brittle. So if you have a super heavy hand, if you're holding the pen like this and hits really hard, you can actually snap it. But there is really good benefits over this, which is why I chose them. On the tip here, it's pretty much all graphite, so you can use the whole tip in here to do value studies and whatever, and that's kind of what I like. Other category I have is charcoal. So this is one of the most, all-in-one type of medium. You can do pretty much anything with just this one stick. Charcoal is amazing. Sometimes it tends to smear and it's a little messy to deal with, but if you want to preserve your drawings, you can usually just try to put it in a surface that doesn't rub, or just add a fixative to it. Another in the line is pencils, mechanical pencils. A lot of people see me using this one and they think it's some sort of special pencil. It's really not. It's just a drafting pen. Tends to be a little heavier on the lower side of the barrel, and it allows me just to kind of keep a softer grip and just allow the weight of the pencil to go around, so I'm not making really deep marks into the paper. And in my personal preference, I use a 2B lead on this paper because it's easier for me to lift the graphite off than with an HB, which is what your regular number 2 pencil is. So, but if you want to start, this is the perfect place to start. Just to understand the fundamentals of drawing, you really don't need anything other than a sketchbook and a pencil and an eraser, which I'll get back into it. These are the erasers. Let me move these away. These are the erasers. The one you'll see me using the most is this one. It is super fun to use, and when I draw, especially in watercolor paper, I do my best not to damage the paper. So this eraser does just that. You can erase big areas, or you can sharpen it to a little point and take little highlights out. And for dry media, well, at least for graphite, it is great, which graphite tends to be the most forgiving out of all of the materials that I'm going to show you after this. This is just your regular plastic eraser. I don't use this one as much, and I'm not sure, but I think this one is what they call a vinyl eraser. And it's supposed to leave less dust. This one doesn't leave any dust, or hardly any dust when you're erasing. This little guy here, most people use it for blending, but for blending I don't blend with what they call blending sticks. I actually blend with brushes. I find the blend to be a little smoother, and it just reminds me a little bit more of painting. And for blending, I use these. These are actually really just cheap brushes that I've accumulated through the years. But for a softer blend, I use kind of a fluffier type of brush. And for a harder blend, I tend to use kind of these that tend to be a little tougher. And that's pretty much for these brushes. I have a bunch of flats, oval washes, and just random things. And for inking, what I use is pretty much this stuff. The Microns. After I used to use a bunch of crafting pens and everything like that. But after I found these Microns, I never really had a need to switch to anything else. These Microns do everything I need. So I work usually from the sizes from the 03 to the 08. And I also have some of these brush nibs pens that they're great. I love these pens. I just not good at them. I'm mainly using for practice now, so I can get better. Because my line work with these looks like there was an earthquake happening. And a good alternative, this is something I picked up from a channel here on YouTube. The YouTuber name, if you don't know him, is Mark Curley. And you'll see him usually sometimes going in with a black colored pencil. And this type of pencil is a little more forgiving than inks. Hence you can go around and it's a little erasable, but you can slightly work your way up into the lines. Only thing that you have to, go around and keep twisting the pencil as you're doing the lines just to keep a fine line. But it doesn't have to be Prismacolor, just any higher quality colored pencil will work just fine, and it gives it a really nice look. I really enjoy using these sometimes. For brushes, I actually have these water brushes. I only have two. These are just Pentel water brushes, and there's a lot of people that actually only use these brushes. I tend to not to like them as much because I feel like they just dilute the color or whatever. And I feel like I have less control of the water in the actual brush. But if you're a field sketcher, this is a great option, and they work great with colored pencils. So the way this works is pretty simple. You put water in here, and water drips down into the brush, maintaining it fairly moist most of the time. The only drawback is I think dry brushing with these type of brushes is really hard, and dry brushing is something I kind of like to do sometimes. So that's it for those brushes. These, when I keep my watercolor brushes fairly simple. I'll usually use a number 6 round brush, a 0 just for detailing, and some sort of flat brush. This is usually my setup, and it's worked for me so far. You can see that this one is pretty much no longer a round brush, so it doesn't have a tip like this one anymore. And that's due to, well, they're a little older, and due to my inexperience, I didn't take care of them too well. So these are just Cotman, and one of them is a Grumbacher. They're great. Some of the qualities you want for a good watercolor brush is a brush that actually holds a lot of water and pigment and doesn't just dump it into the paper. And nowadays you can find that on just about any brushes. Those Cotman, they were fairly inexpensive. What I ended up upgrading to were these Princeton Neptunes, and I found these brushes just to be amazing. They hold a lot of water, a lot of pigment, and they will distribute it evenly throughout the paper. I feel like I have a lot of control with these brushes, and they feel really nice in the hands. And pretty much, I think these are gonna be the ones that I'm gonna use regularly. However, the round brush, doesn't have as fine of a tip as I actually wanted it to, so I probably end up switching. This is the zero brush that I would use. I have another style of brushes that I use, that I collect. This is pretty much a novelty brush. These are called Dragon's Tongue, and they're made in Spain. These are, like I said, they're a novelty, and these ones are extremely expensive. The highest quality you can find, and they're Kolinsky Sable brushes, natural hair. One of the reasons why I don't use them, I will eventually. So why do I have art materials that I'm not gonna use? But I usually use them just to. I tried them a couple of times, and these are top notch. But yeah, that's about it for brushes. And let's talk about paints. Got paints. When I first started, I was the type of artist that would kind of go cheap with them, and it was just basically to start out with, and to kind of test some things out. So I started with these. I went to my local art store and ended up finding some of these called Artist Loft. I did learn with these, but I will warn you, these are really low quality paints, and I think the purpose of these are either for kids or mainly for people that are trying to understand watercolors. Mixing with these type of paints is really difficult. They'll end up muddying your colors really quick if you're not careful. And these ones, I have no idea where I got these. Probably I got them from some of my cheap escapades. I have some of these Daler-Rowney. They're a little better than the Artist Loft. And I have also some of these called Master's Touch, which I never tested these. I actually ended up getting these paints because they came in a really cool box, and the box came with the paint, so I ended up just buying the whole set just for the box. The paints that I use nowadays is Cotman and Van Gogh, which are these. Now, I have more Van Gogh than I do Cotman, but one of the things I like more about Cotman is their blues are amazing. I love Winsor Newton blues, even Cotman on there. These are student grade paints, and ever since I got them, they're just a joy to work with. So I actually ended up ordering new paints, so when I get them, I'll share the experience with you guys. So that's what I use for paints, is Van Gogh and Cotman. Usually it's more Van Gogh. I only have like 3 tubes of Cotman. Only of professional grade, artist grade watercolors, and it's a Hooker's Green by Rembrandt. Let me see if I'm looking to find it. Here it is. This was actually given to me by the awesome people at cheapjoes.com. Not sponsored. I'm not sponsored by any of these, by the way. I wish. But I found out that these are amazing as far as how pigmented they are. And little by little, I feel like I'm gonna switch more. And another, which I have, and also have this 18 set of tube watercolors. Now, you've seen that I only have tubes. I don't have a need to use pans. There's really no difference between pans and tubes aside from portability and a little bit of convenience. I found, for my purposes, since I do studio work most of the time here at the desk, tubes are better for me. But for some people that like to take their watercolors out, I think pan watercolors would be a little better choice. So this is the 18 set, and it has a really great range. These are a little, I feel like there's a little, these are student grade, I believe, on the category of student grade paints. I haven't done much of these except a couple of swatches. And this is done on the Strathmore 300 paper. And if you can see these colors, they're very vibrant, which I was really surprised. And it ended up layering. I wish I would have actually marked which colors these were, but I just wanted to see how the colors went down on this paper. And you see here, even on this paper, they tend to explode really nice, and they're really good colors, so in my opinion so far. Some other colors I have, these are really old. This type of colors, they were like 98 cents, and I just wanted to try them. These are cakes or pans. I think these are from Crayola. And it was kind of one of those experimenting things. And I was surprised. They're fairly dry, but they do what they should do. If you're learning watercolors, I also, for the whites, I generally use these things. This is white gouache and Jelly Roll pen. Most of the time, for my names, I end up just doing little highlights. So I end up using the Jelly Roll more often, but the gouache is amazing. This is artist quality gouache grade. So it was a little more pricier, but you can see it's pretty much unused. And I've had this for quite a while. So it'll last you a long time for the investment. When I first got these, when I went to buy them, I had no idea what the difference between opaque white and Chinese white was. So I ended up buying both. And I found out I like Chinese white better. I tend to need less layers, even though this paint is extremely pigmented. This is usually how the kneaded eraser comes before I end up playing with it too much. So it comes in little packs like this. It's not too expensive. It's fairly cheap. Another thing I have are these watercolor pencils. So I feel like there's a perfect marriage between these water brushes and watercolor pencils. If you're a field sketcher, I feel like this is like your ultimate sketch set. It's having some watercolor pencils. These are the Faber-Castell Art Grip Aquarelle, and these are the Koh-i-Noor Hartmouth. These were on clearance when I got them, and they were both around the same price. But one of the things I really like about Faber-Castell, aside from their awesome packaging, is the great amount of color that comes. So this is a 12 set, and I feel like I can get any color I want out of these. So what a water soluble pencil is you lay down a line and then you pass water over it, and then it'll explode, kind of like not explode, but it'll activate kind of like watercolors. And what I found about these is they kind of barely leave a line when you pass the pencil. If you're really rough and go really hard, it'll leave a line. This this Hartmouth, I think that's the type of pencil this is. I think they're great. They're really pigmented. One thing that annoys me, and it's more about kind of their labeling more than anything else, is how they have like, it says like brown right at the tip right here, and where it's made right at the barrel back here. I feel like if you're a heavy watercolor pencil user, you will go through this area by sharpening it pretty quick. So I feel like it will be a little better to kind of change instead of the maker here, where it was made here to here, and just invert the two. But that's just, I think I'm just nitpicking, I don't know. What else? And another tool that I feel like it's very important are books. I don't have as many books as I used to. I ended up losing a lot of them, unfortunately. But this is something I want to introduce in the channel, because I feel like if you're starting to learn anything, a great source are books. Especially they have been for me. I'm originally a self-taught artist, so I feel like I will be doing a lot of reviews on all of these books. So just a sneak peek, this is pretty much what I got. I'm gonna be reviewing on. I have the watercolor artist Bible. It's a really nice book. Mark Crilley, The Realism Challenge, and this is one of the most amazing watercolor books I've had. I've had this book for a very, very long time, and I look forward to reviewing all of these books and sharing with you guys. Mastering Manga 2 and 3, and I have this one. This one is actually another kind of watercolor on a fantasy style, which I personally lean more towards the fantasy type of artwork. And I have this style of palette. If you've seen any of my videos, you've seen these things like right here on the side, and sometimes I push them around because they get in the way. But these are ceramic palettes, and I feel like for my needs, ceramic is one of the great. For me, it works a lot better. They clean very easy, and you can see the pigment on the palette a little better than on plastic palettes. But I'll go into further detail into all of these materials later on, because I tried doing another video where I put my opinion on all of these, and the video ended up being almost like 2 hours. So just to keep things short, that is my little tour of my art materials. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was somewhat informative for you guys, and let me know of your thoughts and opinions on all of these materials. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time.